सेव किया था ना?
मैं सिर्फ इसलिए गया था क्योंकि उसने मुझे कॉल किया, that's it. But listen though.
Save it for someone else.
जिंदगी में सेव करना जरूरी है, मगर जब बात पैसों की हो, सिर्फ सेविंग से काम नहीं चलेगा। इक्विटी म्यूचुअल फंड्स में इन्वेस्ट कीजिए और अपने सेविंग्स को आगे बढ़ने का मौका दीजिए।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
In May this year, the venerable Economist magazine did a cover story on India rising and said a novel confluence of forces stand to transform India's economy over the next decade, improving the lives of 1.4 billion people and changing the balance of power in Asia. When anyone talks about the confluence of forces transforming India, we generally think of India's educated youth power, stable democracy, strong services economy, domestic consumption story, business-friendly policies, infrastructure, and so on and so forth. Rarely, if at all, do we also include the rise of Indian women as one of those new contributing forces. Women, in fact, are emerging as game changers, and that is the focus of our latest episode of Quartermaster, the show that documents and analyzes change and its impact on economy, business, and money, and the larger society itself. And you must have noticed that it is not a quarter yet since we did our previous episode, but that is because of popular demand for Saurabh. People left messages after messages saying, why is this episode coming after every quarter? Why can't it be monthly? And we are trying to make it monthly. And Saurabh has been very, very kind enough to agree to our request. So thank you so much, Saurabh, and welcome back. Isn't it a bit unusual for two men to be discussing the rise of Indian women? And thankfully, you have a colleague, a woman colleague with you to take part in this show. Hi, Nandita. Welcome to The Print and welcome to Quartermaster.
Hi, Rajesh. It's a pleasure.
And I think, Rajesh, the reason it's not just appropriate that Nandita should be on the show, she's also done the bulk of the research behind the rise of Indian women. So she's really the substance of the material, the bulk of the material, number crunching, the research, going and meeting people who are tracking the rise of Indian women comes from an Indian woman herself. So great to have Nandita on this show as well.
Fantastic, Saurabh and Nandita. So I'll throw this question. You guys decide who wants to take which one. How did you come upon this, thought? What was the trigger to track the rise of Indian women and their role in the change we are seeing in the economy?
So I'll have a crack, and Nandita can also give you more anecdotes from our travels. So one of the ways that Marcellus conducts research, Rajesh, is we go out and about into small town India, sometimes into rural India. And Nandita, myself, some of our colleagues, we've been traveling around India. COVID somewhat interrupted our travels, but before COVID, after COVID, we've been on the road. And one of the things we noticed as we went into smaller towns, say cities like Nashik, cities like Kolhapur, is the rise of the Indian businesswoman, right? Entrepreneurial women who are running, say, roadside restaurants, running beauty parlors, running local libraries, being very visible in e-commerce. And that's what really triggered the idea that we're seeing a change in the income levels of Indian women, and this income level change is happening not just through well-educated people like Nandita getting well-paid jobs in the financial services sector, but that change permeates far down the social strata into women who are earning small. But 5 years ago, those earning opportunities were not there. And that's what really triggered the thought. Nandita, I don't know if you can comment, Kolhapur and Meesho, the interactions we had there, you might want to throw some light on that.
Definitely. So one of the things that I sort of mentioned when we were traveling to, tier 2, tier 3 cities like Kolhapur and, other places in Maharashtra, as well as, pan India, what we noticed was that a lot of people who we interacted with were using Meesho. And Meesho is basically a business aggregator platform where, smaller local players come together and they basically sell their products online. So it's like an Amazon, but for the smaller towns. So this is something that we saw, and this, sort of triggered this whole line of thought that, there's something that's going on in the rural area, in the rural India, or, in the small town India that we sitting in Mumbai can't sort of understand in our offices. So then that triggered the whole exercise of talking to more people who've been going to such places, have been interacting with these women, and have sort of charted the whole journey of how women who are primary caregivers, who still are primary caregivers in a household, have sort of charted their whole financial journey by just standing on their own 2 feet and becoming financially independent in some sense.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on the change you have witnessed? Because one of the points we keep reading frequently, and it's a point you've made in your paper also, on the labor force participation rate, and that women are falling off from the labor force participation rate, or not entering the labor force as much as they should be. And what you're saying seems to be counterintuitive.
Let me frame the situation, Nandita, and you can give the nuanced picture. So Rajesh, what we keep reading about in the Indian press, right, and indeed in the global places, Indian women's labor force participation rate has trended down, and it has, if you take the headline labor force participation rate, the LFPR, it's fallen from around 32% in 2005 to a miserable 19%, right? That's the overall number. 32 has become 19, and everybody's therefore, agonizes about it. What Nandita's research did was it shed some very interesting light on why this headline drop in LFPR, headline drop in women's LFPR from 32 to 19 should not be seen as a negative sign. And Nandita, you might want to delve into why the headline drop is actually a deceptive drop.
Right. So if you look at the aggregate number, it does trend downwards, and it's been going down, since 2005, and it's consistently been that way. However, if you look at it from a different angle, and this I've also mentioned in the piece that we have published last week, if you look at it from an age-wise stratification, the entire LFPR issue, what you can see is that the age group of 15 to 24, their LFPR has consistently been going down. That means that women who are in the age group of 15 to 24, they are not entering the labor force, are not employed in the labor force. However, if you look at the 35 plus age bracket, like anything above 35, it has actually been consistently growing. So what it basically points out is that at the outset, you can see that women are entering the labor force a little later than they were before. That means that their education levels have been going up. Women are delaying their labor force entry by quite a bit, which means they're getting educated better and for longer. And this can be corroborated with the education data. We've seen the gross enrollment ratio going up over the last 10, 20 years. Furthermore, if you look at the gender parity index as well, which is basically your female gross enrollment rate divided by the male gross enrollment rate, it's actually greater than 1 for most of the stratification of the education system that you can see, except for higher education, but it's very close to 1 even there. So, and this was back in 2015-16. So I'm pretty sure that it has actually gone up over the years. So, I mean, you can just corroborate that data, and you can see that fall in 15 to 24 is quite reminiscent of the entire education bit.
Once the post-COVID data comes out, we reckon not just for schooling. In schooling, there's already more women going to school than men, more girls going to school than boys. But we reckon even for university education, there'll be more girls going into college and coming out of college than boys. And therefore, we can comprehensively see across the entire education system at every level, more girls going in than boys. And we also know from data published by the various states that the pass rates are higher for girls than boys. So more girls are studying than boys, and the girls are doing better than boys. That means comprehensively, women are getting more educated quicker than men, and that means greater labor market opportunities. That means they're entering the labor force late, which is why the LFPR data, the headline labor force participation rate going down, we believe is deceptive, and one shouldn't lose too much sleep about that.
But I must tell you one thing, Nandita and Saurabh, from the time I was in school, college, from the time I became a journalist and started working on reports and giving headlines, there was one headline that has always been constant. Girls perform better than boys in class 10. Girls perform better than boys in class 12. Girls perform better than boys in BA, BSc, whatever it is. That has been a constant, if you guys remember.
Absolutely. But I think the difference now is that superiority of girls over boys, Rajesh, that's also resulting in greater income earning opportunities. And I think this is where the rise of the mobile phone, the rise of the internet, the rise of e-commerce is allowing women to translate that educational superiority into cash in hand, right? So Nandita cited Meesho as an example. I think another example, a story that was carried on the print a couple of days back, Rajesh, is Pratilipi, right? Pratilipi is this app, a website where you can self-publish. The numbers are astonishing. It has some 25 million readers. 25 million people are reading on Pratilipi in a variety of languages: Hindi, Bengali, Marathi, Malayali, and so on. 8 lakh Indians are writing on Pratilipi. That itself is perhaps a story for a later day. Just to make sure how people understand the salience of 25 million, if you added up Britain and France, 2 G7 economies, if you added up Britain and France, they wouldn't have so many readers, right? 25 million is a mind-boggling number. But what's very interesting about the Pratilipi story that your colleague Antura Barua, I think her name is, the story that Antura Barua wrote is, the top 10 writers in Pratilipi are women. And it seems that the biggest customers of Pratilipi are women. So Pratilipi in a sort of microcosm is the change that social media and the internet have delivered for women. Women can access information on Pratilipi. They can read stories on Pratilipi, especially stories about the rise of Indian women, their very new tastes and what they want to read. But also Pratilipi is a source of earnings for writers. So Antura Barua's story on the print cites a couple of examples of writers who are getting 2 lakh per book on Pratilipi. That's not a small amount. And as a writer myself, I know earning 2 lakhs from publishing is a big deal. So the fact that not just Meesho, Pratilipi, variety of other apps are opening up opportunities for Indian women to monetize their superiority in education, I think is a massive leap. That's why we called it a game changer, right? First you got electricity. By 2018, the country had electricity, right? 2018 ke aspas, you also had the rise of basically free broadband, courtesy Jio crossed the broadband fell, and bang, right? That's to unleash the earning power of smart women. And I think this is not going to stop. This trend continues. Women will carry on showing up in greater numbers in the education system. They'll carry on outscoring boys and men. And courtesy these little things in our hand, they will monetize their education, and all power to them. That's why we chose this subject as a subject to write about. This is something we can make money on as investors, which is also there's a vested interest. We're trying to make money out of this mega trend as well.
Let me throw a small factoid at you, Saurabh and Nandita. In my newsroom, the print newsroom, in our newsroom, journalism is increasingly having more women journalists than men. It used to be a male-dominated profession even when I entered 30 years back. But today, in the print newsroom, we have 79 women and 35 men.
Wow, awesome. Sign of changing times in India, sign of the change.
It has changed, and it will only continue to change in that direction. But coming back to what we were discussing, you give a lot of credit to the service economy, how that has also helped women, grow and rise. Can you talk about that a little more?
So, Ranita, why don't we share the stats on how women's participation in the service economy has jumped sharply, whereas their participation in the agri economy has dropped, and then I'll get into why this has happened.
So I have the chart in front of me, and it's there in the print that we also published. Over the years, so since 1991, the percentage of women as a percentage of women who are actually employed in the entire labor force, 76% was in agriculture. Around 12% was in services, and 12% again in industry. That's how the breakup was in 1991. Today, the share in services has gone up to 28%. This was back in 2019, so the data after 2019 is not there because of the COVID disruptions. In industry, it's 17%, and for agriculture, it has fallen to 55%. So this basically shows that services, at least in the numbers, we can see that the percentage of women getting employed in services is higher and has been increasing over the years. However, for agriculture, it has been falling. For industry, it has been sort of a flat line, and it has recently started falling as well. So this is primarily due to the fact that women are getting more educated. They are getting educated to a higher degree, which sort of gives them the skills that they need to excel in services-led careers. So something like financial services, or in the hotel industry, or the basic services industries where you require brains over brawn. So that's the whole
So just to
idea.
sort of look at the numbers slightly differently, as Nandita said, female employment in the services sector has jumped from being 14% of female employment at the turn of the century. It's doubled to 28, right? Now, Rajesh, as you mentioned, right, in the print newsroom, it's now predominantly women. And I think this story we are hearing about from a variety of service industries, hospitality being one. Now, services is one area where India does have a comparative advantage. Everybody who's watching this will be aware of India's comparative advantage in IT and IT-enabled services. We also have increasingly, it looks like we have a comparative advantage in creating a low-cost financial services sector. We discussed on the previous episode of the Quartermaster, Aadhaar, Jan Dhan, UPI. And as sectors like IT, ITS continue booming, as the financial services sector continues booming on the back of the digital economy, that places well-educated women beautifully. These sorts of sectors, women are the preferred employees, right? Sectors like hospitality, sectors like financial services, IT, ITES increasingly are seeking women employees. And as women are getting educated in greater numbers, they are becoming natural. It's like two magnets drawing to each other. And we reckon this will continue. India's natural competitive advantage in services is likely to sustain. As we discussed, I think perhaps on one of the previous Quartermasters, we reckon the IT services industry in India, which is roughly $200 billion, potentially becomes something like 1.5 trillion in the next 4-5 years. As the IT industry booms, another natural area for women to get employed in. So it's a confluence of circumstances, right? Education, rise in education, rise in easy availability of electricity, broadband, and mobile phones. And finally, services economy booming, education translated into employment.
Sort one of the common features of our conversations has been comparing what happened in another part of the world at a different point of time and how that might or is very likely to happen in India at this point in time. And again, in this instance, we are looking back at America a century ago and what happened in America a century ago. I mean, it feels like we are a little bit late to the party, but better late than never. Electricity, I mean, internet is something we all talk about, smartphones, we all talk about all the time, something as basic as electricity and the difference it can make to the lives of women, and of course men definitely, but more so the women, considering the kind of roles they have been traditionally relegated to in Indian society.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head. Our friend Anirudh Datta, who's written a lovely book on Indian women called 500 Billion Rising, right? Anybody out there watching, if you want to understand the rise of Indian women in a full book, read Anirudh Datta's book, 500 Billion Rising. So in that book, Anirudh spotted something which led us to this path of this line of research. He spotted that as courtesy the rise of electricity, as women are able to automate household tasks like washing, like cooking, if you get free flowing water, you're able to get your stuff done quicker. As the rise of electricity frees up women's time from time consuming household chores, and they spotted that frees up women to go and earn money, whether it's doing Meesho, writing on Pratilipi. You need time, right? You can't just sort of manufacture literature or do commerce on Meesho if you don't have access to time. So that then led us to go and delve into this subject more as to other countries where the spread of electricity freed up women's time, and that's led to rise in women's income. And in a book that we've cited before, a book called The Rise and Fall of American Growth by an economist called Robert Gordon, this subject is covered quite beautifully by Robert Gordon. So in The Rise and Fall of American Growth, Robert Gordon talks about the period in America between 1870 to 1940, right? The period where America got networked, right? Roads, telegraph, electricity, 1870 to 1940. And he says in the book, and I quote, the life-changing implications of the revolution, especially in liberating American women, is a central aspect of the rise in standard of living between 1870 to 1940. He then says, a third cause for the increase in female participation from 1920 to 40 was the gradual diffusion of electric appliances, including the iron, vacuum cleaner, the cooking range, the refrigerator, and the washing machine. And interestingly, in India, as you're saying, better than late than never, we're seeing exactly the same phenomenon. As reliable electricity supply becomes a commonplace thing in India, that's freeing up women's time. They're using that time and they're using their access to the internet to get more information about the world. And because they're educated, that information is then translating into income earning opportunities. That income, that cash in hand, is then opening up new sources of economic activity, new ways to spend money, which people like us in the stock market are monetizing by investing in companies which monetize monetize female income.
There is also this mention of access to financial services. Although I am not too chuffed by this whole talk about women, or anyone for that matter. I'm sorry, it's not women. I have to be, right here. Anyone dabbling in crypto, because I don't know anything about crypto. And sort of, you last time said you don't know much about crypto yourselves, but you have given an example of somebody who's a woman who's doing very well with crypto. But okay, let's talk about access to financial services.
So look, I mean, the example cited in the note Nandita wrote is from a book called The Sisterhood Economy by Shaili Chopra. I think very good book again on the changes that are happening in the country. It's interesting that Shaili Chopra's book contains an example such as crypto. I think whether you and I approve of crypto or not, Rajesh, it gives you a sense of how much risk appetite Indian women had. So the example that Shaili Chopra cites in her book is of a girl in Punjab. She's studying engineering. She's a receptionist. She's a receptionist to earn income to pay for her engineering. But rather than just earning money and putting in an NFT, she bought crypto with it. I stress this was 5 years ago, right? She bought crypto with it, and with the crypto gains, she paid off her education loan, right? But closer home, if you look at the mutual fund industry, right? If you look at the data from the mutual fund industry, there's increasing amounts of data to show more and more mutual fund investors are women. So we've cited in our note the Axis Mutual Fund example, where Axis Mutual Fund reported a 30% increase in the rise of women customers on their platform. And we are seeing similar statistics in Marcellus. So we end up doing webinars with clients. Increasingly, the people reaching out for webinars, Rajesh, you'll be pleased to know, is not middle-aged men like you and me, but collectives, women's collectives in Bangalore, in Kolkata, in Delhi. They're calling up and they are getting us to do Zoom calls, webinars for 15, 20, 30 affluent women at one go. And finally, if you look at the broader piece around the rise of online broking and women, I think you'll find a story there. We don't have data from firms like Zerodha or Grow, but I suspect a big part of the online broking community, a big part of the surge in online broking has been driven by women.
I'd like to add one more point here, just before move to the next point. The point about that crypto investing is not basically to see whether women are investing in a sustainable source of investments or not. The whole point is that they are ready to experiment with the money that they have, and that is a very big change, very big behavioral change. As up until now, women were just trying to, be safe. They were saving money. So this was pre-demonetization. They were saving money in their jars of, rice and wheat and, just storing money, cash, hard cash. But now that you can see that increasingly they are willing to experiment with the online sources of investments. They have a hunger to earn more than what your traditional sources of investments would offer, something like an FD or an RD. And that itself is a very big thing, honestly.
In fact, just before you wanted to say something, I had this thought in my mind. What are your thoughts about crypto, Nandita?
I think it's too volatile and too risky for my taste. I would definitely stay away, because it's primarily because I don't understand the market. I don't understand that kind of investment, and I would not put any money in something that I don't understand. Having said that, if there are women who understand how it works and know the risks and the benefits that we can get from that kind of investment, obviously they should definitely go for it and make the most out of it.
But what is this thing about local role models, that have a national impact? We see examples of successful women entrepreneurs in the papers, in the pink papers, and they have awards for them, annual awards, a list of successful women entrepreneurs. But it's not just those 5 or 6 people who make it to the front pages of newspapers. There are local role models, according to you.
I think Nandita, you did the research. I think you should talk about this subject.
Yeah. As Saurabh mentioned, the book that Anirudh wrote, which was Half a Billion Rising, it has a very good number of examples where this thing has played out. So in a small town, there's a little girl who's going to one of the schools run by some nationwide NGO. So the only point of reference that that girl has of a person, of a woman who's earning by herself and living a good life is her teacher. And that becomes sort of the kind of role model that she aspires to become. And this has been seen multiple times. Anecdotal evidences point to this entire effect of, role models at a local level, at a level that, you can relate to someone and, emulate that person is what matters. So if there's some girl from your neighborhood who you don't even know or you don't even converse with, but you know that she's gone to, say, Delhi, and you're living in a small town like Azamgarh, and you see that, she's living her life, she's earning money for herself, she's going watching movies, she's enjoying her life as we know it, then that sort of, motivates you to be on a similar trajectory, no matter how you reach there, but you would want to do something of similar sorts. You sort of idolize this person who you relate with the most. You can't relate with someone who's, in Mumbai, who's running a big firm and has 100, 200 people running under her. But you can definitely relate to someone who is, very close in terms of financial capacity as well as, the cultural aspect. And that's what, drives this change.
So just to sort of use the example of what I see at home. So my 13-year-old daughter, she's an aspiring baker. And we have a Theobroma in the suburb of Bombay. We live in Rajesh. One of the outlets of Theobroma here. So on her own, actually, 2 years ago, my daughter figured out who's the founder of Theobroma. It's a lady called Kainaz Messman. My daughter looked up on Amazon a book on her, bought the book, read the book, right? And you can imagine, right, rather than, a middle-aged father like me telling my daughter whatever little I know about making money from baking, Kainaz Messman telling my daughter, this is how I built Theobroma. Imagine what it does to that girl's aspirations, what it does to that girl's confidence in her future, right? In parallel, my daughter is seeing that my cousins are marrying later and later in life, right? Most of my cousins have decided not to marry till fairly late in their lives. They've chosen to focus on building their careers. And again, imagine what that does to my daughter's sense of what the future brings. My daughter's perception of adulthood is no longer that I'll get married and have children. A perception of adulthood is I'll do a Kainaz Messman. I'll do what her aunts have done, which is build careers, build very successful careers in cities like Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore, which in turn explains why the age of marriage in India is steadily rising, right? So if you look at, say, 1991, when the economy got liberalized, the average age of marriage in India was 18. Rajesh, that number is now above 22. I think it's probably going to be pushing 23. We don't have the latest data again because of COVID. I suspect in the space of the 30 years of liberalization, the age of marriage has jumped by 5 years, which means lower fertility rates, which means higher per capita incomes. So again, this is a mega trend, what we are seeing here. A revolution happen in front of our eyes, and one of probably the most spectacular revolutions in female empowerment anywhere in the world.
Baking, seems to be the in thing, and it's such a coincidence you mentioned that, Saurabh, because I have a 9-year-old girl who's baking cupcakes.
There you go. Right. So if you want to share business models with my daughter, happy to make that introduction.
I will introduce them. What better than Saurabh Mukherjee's daughter to help out? My money question now, what are the economic and investment implications here? Because again, when we go back to the nitty-gritties and the numbers and even the companies you have talked about and mentioned, there are 3-4 companies you have talked about. I'm sure there are more out there, a Titan or a Mama Earth or a Nykaa. I mean, we need more, right?
Yeah. So I think first let's start with the most obvious piece, right? If we go by the headline LFPR, the labor force participation rate, which is supposed to be a miserable 19%, even if we believe that it's 19 because of women going into education in greater numbers, which is what Nandita's research suggests, this 19, if it were to become even 30, which is by the way where it was when at the turn of the century, even a modest uplift in the labor force participation rate, which I think will happen as those educated women go into the labor force and start earning money, the LFPR will lift up. I think we're looking at an economic uplift worth hundreds of billions of dollars. India's economy is 3.4 trillion. If out of that, basically half the population, the female half of the population has a miserably low LFPR. Even if you give that LFPR a modest uplift, you're looking at hundreds of billions of dollars of economic uplift, which I think will come our way in the coming decade, right? But now, how will that economic uplift come? Basically, it'll come through women earning more money and spending more money. What will they spend on? We cite the obvious example of Titan. Titan has been one of the most successful retailers. It's a $30 billion market cap company. By the way, just to be clear, my family, my parents, Nandita's family, Marcellus' 10,000 clients, we are shareholders in Titan. So Titan's been a...
So am I, disclosure, so am I.
So we got a whole Titan Jugalbandi going here. But just to focus on the facts at hand, Titan's profits have gone up tenfold in the last 10 years. I think they've gone up, cash flows have gone up some 300-fold in the last 20 years. And it's almost entirely driven by women. Titan, 85% of their profits come from jewelry. Titan sells premium diamond-studded jewelry, which affluent women like Nandita buy, and they drive Titan's uplift. Now, this story is not going to stop. This story of successful women earning more, whether they're earning on Protilipi, they're earning on Meesho, they're earning on Marcellus, they're earning in the print newsroom, they're going to go and spend money. And as that spending continues, we will have more Titans. Now, potentially a Titan in the making, potentially, is Nykaa. Right, so Nykaa IPO'd last year at around $6.5 billion market cap. As everybody knows, it's India's largest beauty and personal care platform. It has 15 million customers. The market cap has come off a little bit since the IPO, but the revenues haven't. There's revenues are now pushing towards $650 million of annualized revenue from selling beauty and personal care online. Right, these are spectacular numbers. It's very difficult to find a BPC platform, a beauty and personal care platform, grossing these sorts of revenues anywhere else in the world. So a Titan and a Nykaa, I think, is the tip of the iceberg. We're going to see more such companies coming through. In the unlisted space, we have Mamaearth, which in the space of no time, I think it's been around for, I think Mamaearth has been around for 2 or 3 years. They've got 5 million customers. They're already profitable. And Mamaearth, as the name suggests, is women and women and babies products. Already profitable, already with revenues in excess of $130 million, right? So this story is going to be a mega trend. We are looking at this very keenly to see how much more, where else can we make more money on it in the listed space. Those who are investing in the unlisted space, there'll be other opportunities. And in a way, the reason I was really taken by Antora Barua's story on Protilipi. Protilipi is a more left field way to monetize the ascendancy of Indian women. Titan is a more obvious way, but Protilipi is a most unexpected way, and the numbers are mind-blowing. Right, 25 million readers, a typical book getting 3 million readers. I wish my books got even 1 million readers. 3 million is mind-blowing.
I think it's only fair, Saurabh, that Nandita has the last word on this today.
Absolutely.
So I think there's a great potential, as I've also mentioned in the blog, as Shaili Chopra has written in her book, the potential for Indian women to contribute to the economy is immense. She's actually put a number there, which is 700 billion USD, which I think is a great boost towards the objective of that 5 trillion economy that we're trying to achieve. If we're able to nail this women labor force participation piece, which I strongly believe that we'll be able to, given how the trends are moving and how women, anecdotally, I've seen that, they're progressing in their lives and their careers and education. This is not at all a tall ask for a country like ours. At a stage where we are at, and I think there's a great potential for everyone to benefit from this proliferation of women in the country.
Thank you so much, Nandita. I will conclude with, the line in the last paragraph of your paper, which says the rise of India's women is symptomatic of the rise of a new India, better educated, better informed, and more gainfully employed. And that is so refreshing to, read, because we know the obvious stories we read that don't make us so happy. But this is fantastic. And I'm so really glad that, you chose this to be the topic of our conversation. conversation for Quartermaster this time. Thank you so much to both of you, and I hope our viewers enjoyed listening to this as much as I enjoyed listening and discussing this with you. Until the next episode of Quartermaster, all of you please take care and stay safe.